Thank you. Okay. Good morning. If everyone can come in and have a seat, let's do a little poll. We're talking about power today. So how many of you maybe were on a group project at work or at school and you're deciding who's going to be the leader, and deep down inside, you didn't say it out loud, but inside you're thinking, I need to be the leader. I'm going to be the best leader in this group. Raise your hand. You guys, so humble. How many of you, what's a good one, who are, you're frustrated and you feel like your parents are just telling you what to do and you have no power and control? How many of you want to just take over and you can't wait to leave the house and you want to, yeah. That was me. I couldn't wait to leave the house. Okay, today we're going to continue our conversation on the good life. Life is upside down. Because I was telling Cuts, like, it's not just should be upside down. What Jesus is talking about, life should be like stretched out, twisted, turned around, like mixed up, scrambled, and then be upside down. Because it's so crazy the things that Jesus was saying. But Cuts reminded us the first Sunday about how blessed it means good life. And how it means God is on your side. And how the Beatitudes are not prescriptive. They're not instructions on do this and you'll have the good life. But it's more a description of what Westlake would call experiencing heaven together. That they are the announcement of God's kingdom here and now. It's the future that begins in the present. And so we see glimpses of heaven. But it didn't feel like the good life to Jesus' audience, who were the forgotten, the people who didn't have any influence, the people who were oppressed by heavy taxation, who were excluded. They were experiencing poverty and illness. And so for them, when Jesus said, oh, blessed are the meek, the people you guys are living the good life, I imagine that if they were alive in our day, they'd be listening online, they'd be like, let me move the little circle. Did he just say what I thought he said? Right? It would have been like, what is he saying? Does he know what he's talking about? Did he say we're living the good life? Because in Jesus' day, the Roman Empire ruled the known world. They ruled everything. It was widely believed that the victory that they experienced, it meant that the gods were on their side. That strength and dominance were signs of the God's blessing. So the Romans, they looked blessed. They were strong. That was a blessing. They conquered. They possessed land. From the outside, it looked like God was blessing the Roman Empire and that he was on their side. So when Jesus is saying, no, God is on your side, it would have been like, what? This is crazy. This is upside down. This is not how we experience it. And so Jesus' people, the audience were like, what? Wait, if God is on our side, when am I going to get my portion? And if they're winning and they have all of this riches and land, like, I'm sick. I have nothing. I am not influential at all. I have no status. People forget about me. They walk by me. Like, is it really worth trusting in God? Like, is trusting in God actually, do I have that question? Is trusting in God, actually worth it? In our world, we ask the same question, right? The rich keep getting richer. They use their power to get what they want at the cost of the vulnerable and the forgotten and the unimportant. They get forgotten. It's not important what they think or what they're experiencing. But Jesus is saying everybody has power, and it all looks different. Like sometimes it's money and influence and status, but sometimes it's our gifts and our time and our presence and our story. And so we get to choose how we want to use our power. And so Jesus looks at them and says, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And Jesus didn't just make this up. He's quoting Psalm 37, which is attributed to King David, Israel's second king. Israel was watching the wicked prosper. watching corruption succeed, and the powerful were getting richer. And so King David writes Psalm 37 to encourage them. So that's what we're going to look at today. He writes, "Do not fret because of those who are evil, or be envious of those who do wrong. For like the grass, they will soon wither. Like green plants, they will soon die away. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy the safe pasture. Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart." And I know this verse is taken out of context a lot. Well, he's going to give me this, and he's going to give me that. No, their hearts wanted, they longed for justice. They longed for God's goodness. They longed for God to do something. That's what their desires of the heart. And this is how David talks about it. He says, "Commit your way to the Lord, trust in him, and he will do this." We will see God's justice. We will see his goodness and his righteousness. "He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn, your vindication like the noonday sun. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. Refrain from anger and turn from wrath. Do not fret, it only leads to evil. For those who are evil will be destroyed, but those who hope in the Lord will inherit the land. A little while and the wicked will be no more. Though you look for them, they will not be found. But the meek will inherit the land and enjoy peace and prosperity." Those are the words of a king, an old king. I think later in the chapter he says he was young, but now he's old, who's looking back at his life. Not in the midst of the struggle and all the wars that and the stress of everything, but he's looking back at what he experienced. David knew what it was like to suffer injustice, and he knew what it was like to commit it. King David spared Saul when Saul was trying to kill him, and he abused his power with Bathsheba. He lived long enough to experience the consequences of both faithfulness and failure. And it's as though King David was trying to encourage these people, and he's trying to tell them, like, man, I have lived a long time. I've seen a lot of things. And the one thing that I've learned is to trust in the Lord. King David recognizes that the wicked prosper and refuses to let their success become the measure of God's faithfulness. Their success isn't the measure of God's faithfulness. He isn't offering a formula for avoiding suffering. King David is offering wisdom for surviving it without becoming like the people who caused it. And so Jesus quotes Psalm 37 because his audience is asking the same question. Is trusting God actually worth it? And Jesus says, the meek will inherit the land. He's like, you are the meek, the ones with no influence, the ones people look down upon and are discarded. Most people who think of, when they hear the word meek, they think of being weak or passive or being a doormat. But meekness is not weakness. It's not avoiding conflict or allowing injustice. Meekness is power under God's direction and constrained by love. I love this quote by Martin Luther King Jr. He says, one of the greatest problems of history is that the concepts of love and power are usually contrasted as polar opposites. But what is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. So I think of power, when I think of power without love, I think of power that is over others. And when I think of power that's under God's direction and constrained by love, I think of power with others. And we all have power, and we all get to choose how we want to use it. Power over asks, how can I protect myself? How can I control the outcome and come out on top? We see this in governments and systems and relationships and even in ourselves. But the meek are living the good life because they're using their power under the direction of God, and it's constrained by love. What is that? Is it my braces? No, just kidding. That's the old reference. Okay, to be honest, living the life of the meek is so hard. And the rich and the powerful, they keep getting richer and at the cost of the vulnerable. And when we're in the midst of suffering and struggling, it feels like we're never going to get our portion. And we all, at some point, may be asking, is it worth it to trust in God? Because when we're afraid that we're never going to get our portion, we're tempted to take it ourselves. That's what power does to us, right? It says, if God's not going to provide, then I'll make sure I get mine. And that doesn't make us bad Christians. It makes us human. Because fear has a way of shrinking our world. And it convinces us that there's not enough and that we're on our own. And that if we don't take care of ourselves, no one will. And those fears are rooted in real pain, real loss, and real uncertainty. So the invitation of Jesus isn't to shame ourselves for being afraid, but it's to keep bringing our fear to God, learning to trust him one decision at a time, rather than letting the fear become the voice that guides us. But that's so much easier said than done. Why would anyone choose power with others? And it's because that's how God chose to use his power toward us. God could have easily overpowered us, but that's not who he is. That's not his character. Jesus himself declares that he is humble and he is meek. He didn't come down to save us by crushing us, but he came down to save us by joining us. Jesus embodies power with others. That's just who he is. He confronted the broken systems. He overturned tables. He challenged religious leaders who were burdening the vulnerable. On the night before he died, he prayed, "Father, if possible, let this cup pass from me." He didn't want to suffer. He didn't pretend that the cross would be easy. And when the soldiers came to arrest him, Peter reached for his sword, but Jesus reached for the wounded soldier. Jesus could have called down 12 legions of angels, but instead he surrendered to his Father. That's meekness. That's power under God's direction and constrained by love. And it looks weak. It looks like he lost. It looks powerless, and it looks like a doormat. But he knows what it's like to be misunderstood. He knows what it's like to feel abandoned, to suffer injustice. He understands. And so when we suffer, we don't have to try to pretend that we're okay. If God feels silent, it's okay to say so. Our doubt and our anger and our disappointment are safe with him. Suffering whispers stories to us that God has forgotten us, that we're being punished, that there's a story or a lesson that we need to learn, or that we're alone. But pain isn't always the reliable narrator. Jesus enters our suffering. He grieves what is broken, and he suffers with us. And often he reminds us that his presence is felt and experienced through his people. So this message was a hard one, and as I was preparing for it, I was really at a loss. I kept thinking about my friends who have been suffering for a long time, for years, who walk faithfully, who do good and what is right. They pray, they make good choices. They keep showing up. But life hasn't gotten any easier. In fact, at times, like the things that should be easy, like just fill out these forms and make this phone call, they take hours. And it's like, oh, it should have taken 5 minutes, but everything just seems harder for them. It's more difficult, even the basic things. And so if I'm honest, like there's times when I'm like, wow, when are my friends going to get their portion? When they ask, man, is it really worth it, Lori, to trust in God? Like I feel like I'm losing. Sometimes it's hard to say keep going. So when I began to think, how can I encourage? What's the example? What's the application here? It was crazy because I started like witnessing you guys walking with others, being Jesus, like embodying Jesus' love and his compassion with others. You painfully experiencing grief, walking with others who are grieving. You who are cancer survivors, walking with others who have the diagnosis of cancer and walking them through the decisions of what path to take and what medications to take. You struggled financially and you give so generously of your finances now. And you share your resources with those who are struggling. You wrestled through the paperwork and the overwhelming systems, and you walk and help people through patiently navigating your way through the paperwork and the websites. You've had friends and family detained by ICE, and now you cry with and you walk with those who are going through the legal process. You've had loved ones who have battled addiction and mental illness, and now you listen without judgment to people who have their children are struggling with addiction and mental illness, and you share what you've learned. You've lived with uncertainty, and now you stand with people who are afraid because you've been there. You know what they're carrying. You know what helped and what hurt. You know what it feels like to wonder if anyone understands. And that's why your presence matters. Your suffering didn't harden your heart. It made you safer for other people. You know how to use whatever power you have, not over others, but with others. This is your power. It's your money, your influence, and your status, and your experience that has become your wisdom, your story that has become your gift, and your presence that has become your healing. What's like you've been through so much, and somehow, I don't know, God's grace, you haven't become cynical. You haven't become bitter. You haven't stopped showing up for one another. You haven't stopped loving. And you have chosen power with others. So my prayer is that suffering may never steal that from you. That the world doesn't convince you that domination is stronger than love. That pain doesn't lead you to believe that God isn't on your side. That the waiting can be so long and so hard that doesn't become too much and too hard that you wonder if trusting God is worth it. Keep being you. Keep choosing power with others. And keep choosing the way of Jesus. Because that's the way of the cross. That's the way it's always looked. It looked weak. It looked like a loss. It looked like Rome had won. But the resurrection revealed that God was doing like his deepest work all along, even when we couldn't see it. And he still is. Let's pray.